the meaning of life, or what is love, because we're not careful enough about how we break these big inquiries down. He described the method of doubts as akin to having a large barrel of apples, where good ones are mixed with bad ones. To be a philosopher means a commitment to sorting out the entire barrel, to inspecting each apple individually and throwing away all the bad ones to ensure only those of the best quality are left. Another way to think about Descartes, and this explains why he would, among other things, turn out to be such a hero to the leaders of the French Revolution, is that he believed in grounding all of our ideas in individual experience and reason, rather than authority and tradition. In his greatest book, Discourse on the Method, published in 1637, he explained how he'd come to write it. A long time ago, I entirely abandoned the study of letters, resolving to seek no knowledge other than that which could be found in myself, or else in the great book of the world. I spent my youth travelling, visiting courts and armies, mixing with people of diverse temperaments and ranks, gathering various experiences, testing myself in situations which fortune afforded me, and at all times reflecting personally upon whatever came my way so as to derive some profit from it. Descartes spent a large part of his adult life away from his native France in the Dutch Republic, since he held the belief, not entirely unwisely, that the mercantile Dutch would, as a people, be far too concerned with earning money to pester a free-thinking man like himself. However, it turned out that the Dutch were a little less materialistic than he'd hoped, and the philosopher ended up moving 24 times to keep ahead of spies and government agents. Descartes' subjective approach to philosophy reached its climax when he arrived at the famous phrase, cogito ergo sum, I think, therefore I am. The phrase first appeared in French, je pense, donc je suis, in the Discourse on the Method, before then appearing in Latin in The Principles of Philosophy of 1644. It was intended to be Descartes' ultimate answer to a question that philosophers sometimes get perhaps unreasonably interested in, namely, how can one know that anything, including oneself, actually exists rather than being some sort of dream or phantasm? On his quest for certainty around this question of whether it might all be a dream, Descartes began by observing that our human senses are deeply unreliable. He couldn't, for example, he said, be trusted to know whether he was actually sitting in a room in his dressing gown next to a fire, or merely dreaming of such a thing. But there was one thing he could know for sure. He could trust that he was actually thinking. His existence could be proved by a neat tautological trick. He could not be thinking and wondering if he existed if he did not exist. Therefore, his thinking was a very basic proof of his being, or, to return to the maxim, I think, therefore I am. This might not sound like a huge insight, but Descartes used it as an Archimedean point in an epistemologically unsteady world. With this certainty safely banked, Descartes argued that his mind could go on to discover other, similarly irrefutable truths. Some of the charm of Descartes' work comes from his entwining of personal details along with more arid philosophical passages. He tells us, for example, that his revolutionary idea came to him during the winter of 1619, when he'd escaped the fierce cold of the Low Countries by hopping into a stove and spending the whole day meditating inside. Descartes epitomizes the solitary end of philosophy. One can, in his eyes, solve the most profound problems by searching deep within oneself. Teams of individuals or ideas passed through generations, as they are in universities, are deeply suspect for Descartes. Philosophers don't need gangs of scientists using expensive equipment, unheard of terminology, and huge data sets. They just need a quiet room and a rational mind. At another point, Descartes recounts that he mocked friends of his who once showed up at his home at 11 in the morning and were surprised to find him still in bed. What are you doing? They inquired skeptically. Thinking, Descartes replied. The group was stunned, but Descartes criticized them in turn for privileging often nonsensical practical tasks over the beauty of pure, quiet reflection in bed. In 1649, Descartes finished another great work, Passions of the Soul. It was the outcome of 6 years of correspondence. With a royal acquaintance, the Princess Elizabeth of Bohemia, who was a keen amateur philosopher and a rather emotional and turbulent soul. She had written to Descartes begging him to write about passions, in order that she might get to know and control her own more clearly. Descartes obliged, thinking that the ancient philosophers had done a poor job of analysing the passions, and that ordinary and not so ordinary people would benefit immensely from another look at the topic. He therefore opened the passions of the soul with a characteristic claim: I shall be obliged to write just as if I were considering a topic that no one had dealt with before me. The work provides a beautiful taxonomy of pretty much any passion one might feel, as well as descriptions of their causes, effects, and functions. It is followed by another section called The Discipline of Virtue, a manual of advice on how we can control our passions and enjoy a virtuous life. Descartes identified 6 fundamental passions: wonder, love, hatred, desire, joy, and sadness. From these, there followed in his eyes an unlimited number of specific passions, combinations of the original ones. Descartes didn't believe in vanquishing passions, as the ancient Stoic philosophers had proposed, merely in learning how to identify them in oneself and understand their impact on one's behaviour. He would have been very sympathetic to psychotherapy. He believed that a key task of being a philosopher was to help people understand and therefore control their passions, that is, become a little less anxious, status-driven, scared, or inclined to fall head over heels in love with inappropriate people. He was optimistic about how much progress we could make psychologically. Even those who have the weakest souls can acquire absolute mastery over their passions if they work hard enough at training and guiding them. Descartes' psychological and philosophical work attracted ever more powerful admirers. In 1646, Queen Christina of Sweden got interested in sorting out issues in her mind and began a correspondence with Descartes. She even persuaded the philosopher to move to Sweden to tutor her in passion and philosophy in 1649.
So in short, if you have been watching, that is the philosophy of René Descartes. He wrote one of the famous books known as Meditations. I know Plato, or is it Plato? Marcus Aurelius has his own meditations, and I think René Descartes is a very useful philosopher. We use most of his foundational material that he discussed, that he concluded.
However, the early working hours required, the Queen could only make time for lessons at 5 a.m, and the harsh cold soon made Descartes ill. He died of pneumonia in 1650 at the age of 53. To remember Descartes by "I think, therefore I am" is perhaps not as shallow as one might initially have presumed. The sentence does truly capture something important about him and the task of philosophy in general. It signals a commitment to working through emotional confusion, prejudice, and unhelpful tradition in order to arrive at an independent, rationally founded vision of existence.
So that is it. That is the philosophy of René Descartes. René Descartes is a great philosopher, and most of his foundational materials are useful to us right now in our society. Even though his name might not be that famous, he has not been mentioned as Socrates, Plato, or Aristotle, but his great works live within us. Those who believe that his methods, the methods of doubt, the methods of thinking, and his philosophy is not yet dead. We have not concluded it, because if a certain philosophy has been concluded, it has to be turned into a theory, then a theory which is plausible, then to be proved to be a law that works and must be respected like a principle. So I think there's a lot to work on, but as he said and as he lived, having that time to work on what you really want and your principles, it is a bit difficult. And to live a virtuous life, most people will not endure that because it is a lonely road. You see, he was not after money, but he was after free thinking. He was a free man. What does that mean to us? You see, how did he manage to survive? Because he needed to survive because no one could provide if he didn't really work for it. So he took every opportunity that came on his way in order to make the cash, and he really moved on a lot of time. But once you become famous and your material and your work is well known all over the country, all over the nation, let's say in Kenya, okay, maybe in Africa. You see, in East Africa, we have at least 18 countries, and those are a lot of countries. And in Kenya alone, you can, if you are great at a certain thing, you can become one of the wealthiest people in Kenya. So, but the problem comes money doesn't really follow the moral principles or a virtuous life. And come to think of it, if your philosophy is not about, you see, being a great businessman and being a great entrepreneur, or being a great someone who exploits from the society in order to gain financially, you have to come up with your own philosophy, because life is just philosophy. It is what you like to follow and what you'd like your life to be like. So I think that most people don't have a good philosophy of about what life is, because they have never questioned life. They have never questioned the script that they are following every day. I know that maybe some have done it and have accepted that the situation cannot be changed for them, and it is the right way to do by their life. So it doesn't really matter. We say that you cannot escape the system if you are not rebellious from the beginning. The reason someone can't be told about the matrix or what the matrix is because if you are rebellious, you are going to discover what the matrix is and what the system is. Either you have already, or you are going to find it to understand it. And that is the reason why you can't tell anyone what a system really is, because if they were going to understand it, they will understand it in their own life somehow. Like that, it's something which I've never really talked about, and I articulated some few days ago. I think it is something that I have to employ in my own life and try to move on without people, because I feel like I'm entitled, and this entitlement must be cut off if I want to grow. I feel that entitlement to move on with the people who are in my life, and if I find something which is useful, something which people can relate and help people to have a better way of thinking, they think that I'm trying to compete, or maybe trying to battle with their way of thinking, or their way of life, and they think it is all about a discussion about winning. They don't look at it as sharing ideas and trying to get a better idea which you can use. I feel like this is all my opinion. I think and I strongly believe that it is about time that
you can do it. Always be that